What's up, guys? Week 2 here, and hopefully we got some exciting stuff for you. Last week we kind of talked about some of the mistakes that common people make, and this week we're really going to go over a lot of the fitness myths that need to just die, and we're sick of hearing. A lot of them are just kind of silly, but some of them are actually pretty detrimental, not only to the industry but also just people's training progress. Which I'll kind of let Joey kick off with some of the first ones here. He's hungover / dead from a meet yesterday, so
Yeah.
bear with him.
All right. So one of the most common myths that a lot of newer female clients especially face is that the fear of them like getting bulky if they start lifting. Um, and then I feel like that's one of the main things that discourages them to lift.
For
Uh,
sure.
yeah. So what would be your take on that, or how would you address that? I guess.
Honestly, that one's tough in the sense that it's like so ridiculous that it's hard to almost address, because if you believe that already, you're almost overlooking so many logistical facts and scientific reasoning. But I think that really comes from kind of female bodybuilders, like right at the very top, just taking tons of gas, tons of steroids, which, hey, if that's your sport, whatever. But then it breeds like this misconception that women are going to get that big. So I really think that kind of comes from being honest. Like professional CrossFit athletes, we know you use steroids. Maybe not all of you, but we know it fucking happens. So really just from the very top, like seeing women that look like that. And then the average woman's like, I don't want to accidentally look like that, which is just silly. So just having that conversation with your clients right from the beginning, I think is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that since there's so many people in the world who just don't have that scientific background, it's harder for them to realize something like that. So,
Right.
I mean, most people get their news just from like the straight media, or like you've seen the headlines on the magazines in the supermarkets and all that. So, I
Oh,
think
it's gross.
yeah,
It's gross.
yeah,
Um, right. So then I guess like it really just comes down to finding good sources to educate yourself. So one of the things I like to do with my clients is not just tell them what to do, but kind of teach them how to figure it out on their own. So just making them turn to a different resource other than the tabloid magazines at the supermarket, I think, at least lets them start to get to their own reasoning process and understand that really is silly just from the inside out.
no, I like that. So, where do you tell them to go for that then? Oh no,
Usually like websites. It, what's that?
no, my connection was a little unstable. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
mine's a little shaky here. That's all right though. I've got a few like go-to websites I like to send people to. Working Against Gravity is great, especially for women. Girls Gone Strong. They do a
Yeah,
awesome
yeah,
job, like a tremendous job. And not only do they kind of give good information, they're kind of leading by example as well. So
right.
women can kind of see that and be like, look at these girls training so hard. They look great. They know what they're talking about. And they're just kind of dispelling myths left and right.
Yeah, so I'm just checking out this website right now.
I don't know how you did that, but that's awesome.
I just press share on your thing, but
Sweet.
no, this is cool.
Yeah, the Working Against Gravity site was shown to me by a good friend of mine, and ever since I love it. It makes it really simple, but it's also like easily digestible. It's not really boring stuff, and I think it's like topics that apply to most people in their training and experiences.
Yeah, I think a really great resource for me when I just started as a trainer is Tony Gentlecore's website. That's just TonyGentlecore.com, and he's one of the best writer slash coaches out there.
For
He
sure.
like writes very easily digestible information for not just us in the industry, but for the general public. And it's just great if you want to educate yourself without reading into the science stuff.
Right, like you said, it's easier reading. you get to hear about his cat and his nerdy obsessions as well as actual really good information.
Yeah. So on that topic, what about the myth of like, will I get huge if I take protein or like creatine?
First of all, I wish. But second, no. I mean, everything that you put into your body is kind of almost like a push in the right direction towards a certain effect. But you have to kind of do those things to get the most out of it. So I mean, just by taking protein, you're not going to gain muscle. That's
Right.
not how. You have to provide that stimulus. But to a small degree, yes, protein, creatine are going to help with your weight gain or weight loss, depending on how you use them. But no, like just looking at the research, supplements have such a small effect
Well,
as to your
right. They're called supplements for a reason.
right. Exactly. It's just like the tip of the iceberg there. So I mean, if you're getting too big, um, first of all, it's probably not too much muscle. Exactly, too
Yeah.
big. If you're gaining too much weight, I should say, and you're taking protein, I guarantee you it's not the protein or the creatine. It's everything else you're putting in your body before you have that protein shake before bed.
Yeah. One of the examples I like to give is a scoop of protein is like generally around 24 grams, or a scoop of whey is generally around 24 grams. Um, but like, when's the last time you saw someone get huge from eating one extra chicken breast or
Right.
like one extra steak?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Right. Which is an even more like really acceptable the source of protein. You know what I mean? Like the piece of steak is going to do more in
right,
theory
right, right,
than a scoop of protein. And even that's going to make you blow up. You know? So.
right. And then another, I think another thing people don't realize about creatine is just it's an amino. I believe it's two amino acids. So it's not. Well, first of all, it's not a steroid because it's not a cholesterol, but it's something that your body makes naturally and something that you are taking in naturally from like salmon. Salmon's one of the higher sources of creatine in food. Um, but again, just like protein, it's not something that is completely foreign that if added to your body creates that big of a change. But with that being said, protein and creatine are probably, besides caffeine, the two most tested, like tried and true supplements of the whole industry. So if anything, like
Oh, absolutely.
they should be the only ones that you're taking.
Right. Like the cornerstone of the supplements I take are creatine, caffeine, and protein.
Right.
Just for purely the reason that you said, there's so many studies behind them supporting that they actually do what they say that they do, which
Yeah.
should be the reason you take a supplement in the first place.
All right. Okay. So you touched on this a little bit earlier, but there's another myth that like a lot of people's or all of our favorite celebrities and athletes they're all natural. They're all drug free. And like
Yeah.
do this workout in Men's Health and then you can look like Hugh Jackman in Wolverine or whatever.
Right. Right. So once again, I think that all kind of just comes from honesty. Like personally, I don't really have an issue with steroids
Right.
at like a high level. It is what it is. I don't take them, obviously, but like I don't see an issue with it. The issue that I see is the dishonesty.
Yeah.
Kind of like capitalizing off that. I don't know. I think it's pretty immoral to take a bunch of steroids, do a training program, and then publish that program for someone else and say that they'll get similar results when you're kind of leaving out a very, very important factor.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think a lot of people, since there's like so many I guess scandals in like the NFL, the whole MLB thing, like 10 or whatever years ago, 10 plus years ago. I don't think people realize that in order to get to that high of a level of anything, pretty much, it's difficult, if not impossible, to do it natural.
Right. Especially with, I mean, once people start, they're not going to stop. And then
Yeah,
if you're the one guy in the locker room that's not, I mean, I get it, and I respect that a ton. And I'd like to think that would be me. But if that's your livelihood, that's literally what's putting food on the table. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's your future, and that
Right.
could be your health. I mean, in the NFL, like if you're not taking steroids and you're getting hit by guys that are, like,
Yeah.
something bad's gonna happen eventually. So I really do think it's just more of an honesty thing, and I don't know how we get there because
Yeah.
legal. So
Yeah. And just to clarify for a lot of people that don't know, uh, most of the time steroids aren't when you're putting it into your body, it's not growing muscle. What it's doing is it's helping with your recovery. So when you're in the gym or when you're working out or whatever, you're not putting on muscle there. It's when you're asleep and your body has time to like regrow all these damaged cells. That's when you're really building it up, and that's kind of the main thing that steroids helps with is just it boosts your recovery to a much higher rate than we can naturally.
exactly, it almost like gives you the quality to be able to tolerate more work.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't know. One of the other myths around steroids that I would wish kind of got abolished is the fact that you just take them and you blow up.
Yeah,
There's still so hard work that goes into kind of capitalizing off of those.
right. Yeah. So yeah, although these athletes and celebrities are taking steroids, that doesn't mean that they're not still working for their bodies. But like Matt said, it's just the people who are capitalizing off of it but not being honest about it that really gets us kind of mad, I guess.
Exactly.
Especially if you're like at such a level where you're a role model to so many people, and
Right.
people like really want, like they think they really believe that they can achieve what you've done naturally. um, and when they've really put in that work, and then all of a sudden they're like, why aren't I there? Then they think they're doing something wrong, and then they try to go back, and then they start to feel bad about themselves or whatever.
Exactly. Or get hurt. I mean, you can't
Yeah,
tolerate the volume that
right.
those guys can tolerate without it. It's just gonna break you at some point.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, on to a lighter subject. um, I still see a lot of people like do a lot of static stretching, especially not really in the gym, but especially like say in gym class when we were in school, or even on our sports teams back then. um, touching it. So what that is just like your average toe touches, arms across your neck, and all that type of stretching. I feel like that's pretty outdated, uh, just because there's been a lot of research going in to show that that actually decreases your strength for a certain amount of time right afterwards. And you also have, if you're stretching on cold muscles, I guess, a higher chance of pulling something, even if it's not like a major pull, it's still something that can happen. So what would be a good alternative to that, Matt?
So I'm a huge fan of PNF stretching right now. It's not a brand new like method. It's been around for years, but because of that, it's pretty true and tested. I'm not necessarily against static stretching, but it always has to be followed by some sort of like active contraction. So a lot of times I'll have someone do like a 2 minute static hamstring stretch to kind of release the tone in like their central nervous system and then in that muscle. But if it's not followed by like an isometric contraction or actively trying to get new range, you're just doing yourself a disservice. Like you said, you're decreasing force production. You're putting yourself at risk for injury, and you're kind of just wasting a ton of time. Especially with like the functional range stuff now, that's kind of starting to blow up. And they have you do a static hold in a position, but like I said, it's always followed by the progressive or regressive isometric contractions, and that's where you really see the progress.
So for some of our listeners who aren't really quite sure what that would be, could you just give like a small example or something?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the ways that I'll have people stretch their hamstrings is lying on their back, straight leg with a band hooked around the foot, and then you're applying tension to the band with your hands. That's a pretty common classic one that I see a lot of people do. So what I'll have someone do is start with 2 minutes in that holding position. They're not really like at maximum range, so it's not even really a true like static stretch in that nature. But they're just kind of letting their central nervous system calm down, realize that that's a safe position to be in. But then after those 2 minutes, I'm gonna have someone drive their heel against that band and try and activate the muscles in that position. And that's your isometric contraction of teaching the hamstrings to like work under length. And if they can't do that, then there's no point in even stretching anyways. Like you want to be able to own that range of motion. So I'll probably have them do like a 2 minute hold, a 10-second contraction, followed by 10 seconds of like a passive hold a little bit deeper. And then I'll just repeat that for a few cycles. And I've seen incredible results with that. Like 3 or 4 weeks, people can already touch their toes with,
Oh,
some
wow.
guys get to their knees before. It's pretty impressive stuff.
So are you talking about this stretch right here?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. Just because my flexibility has never been good. Like even when I was young, like I was never able to touch my toes.
I was the same way. I would say that like mobility and flexibility was my biggest weakness getting into weightlifting. And it took a really long time and a lot of trial and error to kind of figure out what was going on. And just because of that, that's the only reason I kind of like really enjoy the mobility stuff is
Yeah, that makes sense.
process.
Uh, all right. Well, what about, you know, Thanksgiving just passed, Christmas is coming up, and then winter is a big eating season.
It is. It sure is.
Um, what are your opinions on the whole eating clean, like in order to make sustainable or good progress?
I think you have to eat for your goals. And then that kind of depends. Like eating clean is such a broad subject, and I don't even honestly sometimes know what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
Eating clean for one person can be totally different for someone else. But I'm a big fan right now of just kind of taking a macros approach. I don't really subscribe to like if it fits your macros in the sense of I don't like people eating cupcakes for their fats and
Yeah,
carbs. But in that sense, like eating clean isn't just eating vegetables. In my opinion, eating clean is eating for your goals in the healthiest way possible. And sometimes that means that you are going to have to eat some less like clean foods to hit your total calorie goal if you're going up a weight class, if you're trying to build some size, and that's totally fine. I think people put a little bit too much emphasis on a perfect diet as opposed to trying to get 90% of it right and then being sustainable, like you said earlier on. Like sustainability and consistency are the biggest things. You can eat clean for a week, hate
right,
yourself, give up,
right.
or you can eat 90% the way that you should for 6 months and make so much more progress.
Yeah. Like back in college, I think my freshman year, I was just eating chicken breasts and rice, and I got so tired of that within the first week,
Oh
just
my
because
God, yeah,
that's what I thought that we had to eat in order
right,
to like put on size or whatever.
exactly, and that's totally not sustainable.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
And that kind
Um,
of like health comes into sustainability too.
yeah,
People think that they're like exclusive, but I mean, you're not going to eat like shit for a very long time and
right,
not the detrimental effects. So as long as you can sustainably keep up with your diet and reach your goals, in my opinion, that's eating clean.
right. And I mean, most of the people listening to this or watching this are grown enough to know what they should be eating and what they shouldn't be eating.
Right, right. I don't know. Like it's been put as simply to me as like eat like an adult, and I know that
Yeah,
can kind of seem like aggressive and kind of almost mean in a sense. But if you really think about it, like walking around the supermarket, like what would you eat as a grown man, grown woman, making dinner for your family? Like it's probably not going to be Pop Tarts and
yeah,
veggies. And there's a time and a place for those, but I mean, it should really center around whole foods.
yeah. So pretty much if you guys are trying to lose or gain weight, the main thing to watch is your caloric intake.
Yep,
And there's a few good apps for that. There's My Macros Plus and MyFitnessPal. Those are the two big ones out there. They do take a little bit to get used to, especially if you've never tracked your food before.
for sure.
But if you are on some type of weight management journey, that's where your go-to should be.
Totally agreed. I think that tracking your calories and the food intake is so important. And even if you only do that for like 6 months to a year, you just develop like a new understanding of what's going into your body.
Yeah,
especially like portion size and macronutrients. Like a lot of people will eat something and be like, oh, like this probably has a lot of protein, and realize that maybe it does, but it might have a ton of fat too, and that's
Right.
where your calories are taken in from.
Like
So just
eggs are the main one that's surprising for me.
right.
Everyone always says they have such high protein, but they have a very high fat content as well.
For sure. Like honestly, in like relation to the other macronutrient values, like eggs aren't that high in protein.
Yeah.
They are, but with it comes a lot of other things, which is totally fine. And I mean, with my diet right now, that works out. But
Right.
if I was trying to keep calories pretty low, like eggs can be tough.
Yeah. I'm just gonna grab my charger, so it's gonna take a second. But could you explain what about people who are like, what about people who like don't believe, I guess, in the macros, or they would rather believe something like keto or paleo or one of those diets would work better?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so the main thing is just creating a calorie deficit, and then any of those diets are just a different way to do that. A lot of them you have to remember were built around something else other than fat loss. So like keto is very good for like treating seizures and a lot of like neurological and mental disorders. So in that regard, it's tremendous. But if you just need to lose some weight and do it at a sustainable way, no, I probably wouldn't recommend keto just because it's so hard.
Yeah.
And,
And
and
like to do it right is so difficult and
right, to do it right, exactly. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm doing keto," and then you see it, it's not really actually keto.
yeah.
But like I said, like if that's what you need for like a very small percent of the population, and you have a very specific reason, totally fine, have at it. But for most people, it's just creating that caloric deficit, and however you can do that sustainably, that's what's going to work.
Yeah. I think the main thing people don't realize is you can't. It's very, very difficult to cheat physics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you can try to jump and defy gravity, but it's not going to work.
right,
In that same way, you can't put up an argument against a law of thermodynamics where if you're putting more energy in than you're putting out, then you're going to have more mass. Or if you're putting out more energy, using more energy than putting in, then you're going to have less mass.
right. And I mean, that's just how it works. Like you can lose weight eating Pop Tarts if you eat under your caloric needs. Are you gonna be
Yeah.
healthy? No. But just just standing from like a weight loss or weight gain perspective, like that's the big part of it.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys ever watched Super Size Me,
Yeah.
but the Big Mac legend, if you remember, if that like that's all he ate, Big Macs. He was actually a pretty skinny guy.
Yep.
Just because Big Macs were his a main part of his caloric intake, but his caloric intake really wasn't that much. It was like 2 sandwiches a day or something like that.
Right. Um, but yeah, no, and exactly that kind of goes to show like he wasn't healthy, but I mean it
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna gain weight. Those are two like different characteristics.
right. So what about all these like detoxes then?
Oh,
Like,
stop. Well, first of all, your liver detoxes your body. That's its job. And if it didn't do that, you'd be dead. So that's kind of already covered. All those like detox diets, detox this, detox that, that's just for someone to make money off of you. They just don't work flat out. And the only reason they do like work for a little bit is, I mean, you just eat so low calories for a few days that your body sheds some water weight, you lose a couple pounds, but then you're miserable and it all just goes back to the way it was. Like they're a load of crap.
yeah, they do a fantastic job marketing to people, especially who aren't in the industry.
A really good job.
Yeah, but in the end, it's either like pretty much a juice diet where obviously you're going to lose weight because you're not eating food,
Right.
or it's like a laxative where again obviously you're going to lose weight.
It's just not doing it. It's just going right through you. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. The cleanses were tough because even at BSC, when I worked with a ton of clients, that was probably the biggest thing that my clients would come in and they're like, oh, like I'm doing a cleanse after Thanksgiving. And I'd always try and like talk them out of it. But it's hard because there's so many other sources just like inundating with them.
yeah, right. You're only with them for an hour.
Right. And I mean, I don't have a magazine.
Right.
So like these other sources, like they do look legitimate. Um, So that's
Especially with Facebook now, there's so many like videos being shared.
yeah, absolutely. It's really frustrating to go on Facebook sometimes just because
Yeah.
there's stuff out there that like seemingly looks legit and it's presented in like a professional way and it's just not. It's just made up.
Yeah. Just bottom line, just don't. If you see detox anything, just don't.
Don't do it.
Um, and then another one that I think is pretty popular around this, especially next month, actually, where people are getting to their resolutions, is it's the whole like team no days off kind of mindset where they want to jumpstart back into working out, or they have this weight loss goal or whatever, and they just want to hit it hard. Um, what do you have to say about that?
Once again, consistency is king. So jumping right in 7 days a week, twice a day, you're just gonna burn out so fast. I'd rather see someone start like 3 to 4 days a week at a steadier pace and enjoy the process. Because if you're not gonna enjoy the process, you're not gonna stick with it, and
Right.
it's all gonna go away if you do obtain it in the first place. And it takes a long time. You know what I mean? You're not gonna reach your goals in 4 weeks, so you can't take an approach that's only gonna last for 4 weeks.
I think that's a big thing, a big myth that we didn't put in is how long it takes.
It does take a long time.
People like see these magazines and headlines, lose 30 pounds in a month or whatever, but it's possible, but
Right, like you might weigh 30 pounds less, but first of all,
yeah,
that's all fat. That's a lot of water, and not that there's anything wrong with losing water, but once again, it's also not sustainable. Well, I mean,
yeah,
again, if you lose 30 pounds in a month, a lot of that's coming back very soon.
yeah. I actually, when we were planning this episode, I didn't realize how the whole team no days off or not allowing for proper recovery would have such a personal effect on me. Um, for those of you who don't know, I just competed in a powerlifting meet yesterday, actually, um, and it was the worst meets I ever competed at. Uh, just because I signed up for it in August, I believe, and I went on a 2 week vacation in August. I knew I had to do this meet just to qualify for nationals, um, and because of that, me being stupid and not being able to get over my ego, instead of having like a revamp phase after my 2 weeks off, I just decided to jump straight back into it. My back was hurting from squats. My hips were hurting. All of my lifts weren't going up like they were supposed to, or what I thought they were supposed to. And then ended up at this meet. I think I went 7 for 9, but the numbers were very low. Like they were a lot lower than my meet from last year, which goes to show how much progress you can lose just by having that mentality, even at a higher level.
Right, it's ironic because like you want to work so hard and do so much, but
Right,
you too much, you're actually causing detrimental effects.
right.
Which with like more serious trainees, like I find that that's very common, very common, and more is not always better. Uh,
Yeah,
4 sets is not always better than 3. Sometimes it is, but usually it's not.
right. And then on that point too, there's been a decent amount of research recently showing that one set has a let me see if I can just get the wording right. The positive effects of doing one set of say an accessory workout uh, is closer to that of 2 or 3 sets, but the injury ratio is much lower.
Right, right. And so I'm always thinking like when I'm training, and this might sound lazy, but I want to do the bare minimum to achieve the goals that I have. Um,
Yeah,
so if I can get 3 sets of 10 in, and that's going to do just about the same thing as 5 sets of 10, and I'm still going to be stronger the next week, I'm doing that.
yeah,
I don't want to do more work until I absolutely have to.
right, exactly. It's all about recovery. Like I said before, you're not making any huge gains in the gym. All that comes from whatever you're eating and when you're sleeping.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, well, and then speaking of being in the gym too, what about the myth from a lot of beginners that free weights or especially squats and deadlifts are dangerous and they shouldn't be done?
Yeah, I think that myth comes from people doing them poorly.
Yeah.
Because, like, to be fair, and I'm a huge fan of free weights, and I typically don't usually put people on machines unless it's necessary. But all things being equal, if you go into a gym, you have no idea what you're doing, and you have never seen exercise before, and no one's going to help you, it probably is a little safer to get on a machine, just because there's less things that can go wrong. But that being said, properly performed free weights are so much more beneficial, and the injury risk isn't any higher at all if you know what you're actually doing. And I would argue that if you know what you're doing, the machines can be kind of more of an injury risk, just because it kind
Yeah.
of you into a certain movement pattern and
Right.
certain dimensions that just might not fit you. I was talking to a
Right.
woman today, and she can't do leg extension. She's never been able to. She's just very short, and she's never ever fit on any leg extension machine that she's ever used, which is just a great example. Like,
Yeah.
for something that's not there.
Guys, and think about it, as a human being, when have we as a species not sat or picked something up?
Right. Absolutely. You're just scaling the movement, you know?
Right.
And I almost wouldn't say that it's a movement pattern that gets someone hurt. It's more doing it at the wrong time or with the wrong load, if that makes sense. Like, deadlifts aren't bad for your back. Doing them poorly or doing them too much, that's what's bad for your back.
Yeah. Um, it's such a common thing to hear people say to tell you to lift with your legs and not with your back, and yet you probably see those same people in the gym doing deadlifts with a very rounded back,
Right.
lifting primarily with their back.
Right. That drives me nuts. And out of that same thing, like, I don't know if we have this on the list either, but like the myth that like you should never feel your back when you're working out.
Yeah.
People get all in a fuss about like, oh my god, I was doing deadlifts and I felt my back. It's like, well, did you feel it or did it hurt? Because there's a huge difference. It should be working. It should be working pretty damn hard, and it's okay to be sore. It's okay to feel your lower back. If anything, that's what we want.
Right.
So just knowing the difference between pain and I guess stress, that's so important.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing for a lot of newer trainees to
Right.
understand just the difference between general soreness and what was actual pain.
Right. I agree with
Uh,
that.
and just like honestly, just personally, I've been so sore sometimes that it makes me want to throw up, but I know it's soreness and it's not like pain.
And that just comes with like experience.
Yeah.
Yes, like I could see like, and that's the benefit of working with like a coach or trainer in the beginning is like you might have those days where hopefully you won't, but you might have those days where you're just so sore and everything hurts, and like that's where just having someone there to be like, no, that's normal, you know what I mean? Or maybe that's not normal and you should go get it checked out. And just having that guidance is so important.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, what about that's actually a great segue to the myth that people think it gets easier, or like, you've been lifting for X amount of years. Obviously, it's easier for you.
Yeah, no, it never gets easier. Honestly, I'd argue it gets harder. Like as you get stronger and as you get more proficient, you have to work so much harder to get results, and you have to work so much harder to do things properly. Like for you, squatting in the fours and the low fives, like everything has to be right.
Yeah.
You can't like make a small mistake or not have your air or not stay tight and still grind through it. It's not going to happen. You have such a small like margin for error. Um, and I think that's what people do think is like, oh, it's hard in the beginning, and then once I get good at it, it gets easier. Once you get good at it, you make it harder, and that's how you make progress. And it's
Yeah.
frustrating. I get that because it is like an endless cycle of struggle, but that's kind of the beauty of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Like you don't get less sore, which is a huge myth. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that your first 2 weeks to a month, you are crazy sore just because your body's never experienced something like that or hasn't in a long time.
Right.
But I'm still sore every day.
Right. And like also it just depends on what you're doing. Like, I mean, I lift all the time, but if you had me do like a different exercise or a different
Yeah.
variation, or I mean, if you made me pull sumo deadlifts right now, I guarantee you tomorrow I would be so sore just because it's new, you know?
Yeah.
So you just kind of like you adapt to the specific things that you're doing, and it depends on what those things are. Uh,
Right.
I mean, you always have the potential to make yourself sore. That is for damn sure.
Yeah. Right. So it doesn't get easier.
It doesn't get easier, and I hope people don't take that as like discouraging.
Right.
It just, I mean, you get better. So that's the flip side of it.
I think the best way to take it is if you're just starting out, you have so much potential that, yeah, it's not going to be instant, but you will notice changes very soon, much sooner than a more experienced lifter would notice changes in themselves.
Absolutely. And it's awesome. Like those beginner gains and the changes that you see, those are awesome. Those are addicting and it keeps you
Yeah,
back. And that's kind of like where we fall in love with the process.
right, exactly. Like as an example, your first few years of weightlifting, your clean, like how much did your clean increase or your lifts increase in comparison to this past year?
Oh my God, so much. I mean, it's a little bit different in the sense that like I took some time off from weightlifting and now that I'm coming back, I'm almost getting like those beginner gains again, which is
Oh,
so
nice.
but yeah, drastically. I mean, back when I was like training regularly, if I added a kilo to my snatch or my clean and jerk, I was absolutely fired up.
Yeah,
And that was like a huge deal. But like right in the beginning, yeah, you could add like 10 kilos a week just because you're so new to it. And it's more about technique at that point anyway. So
right, right,
that's what's limiting you is your ability to perform the movement.
right. And then just on that, it's worth it if you're just starting out to get your technique down. It's going to be annoying,
For sure.
especially because you're going to be in the gym and you can't use weights or you feel like you're weak, but it's worth the week or two just to get that down.
Absolutely. In the long run, oh my God, that's going to serve you so well. Like when I first started weightlifting, I taught myself, which was stupid. So I'm still fixing like bad habits that I've created.
Right.
And like right now, that's what's limiting the weights that I'm moving. Like I'm more than strong enough to put up heavier numbers. It's just that I don't have the good positions and the good
Yeah.
technique.
Like I've had to reset my squat probably like 4 times within the last 5 or 6 years.
Right. But like that's the importance of being able to take a step back and be like, okay, like this is what's holding me back. Letting your ego kind of step to the side and be like, this is what we're going to work on. And I think that is what really makes a good lifter is being able to like reassess constantly,
Yeah,
um,
right.
figure out what's not working and what is.
This is such so exercise. You, without a doubt, is such a scientific field. I mean, just you as a human, biologically, you are all science.
We love
Um,
science.
one of the most important things that we learned in my science classes in college, not even so in high school, is the the notion that you have to test and retest.
Absolutely.
So say I think doing I think eating 1,500 calories a day is going to make me lose weight. So you put that in motion. You eat 1,500, give or take for a week or so, and then you get your average weight. Did it help? Yes or no? And then change it, and then retest it again.
Right. And that's what you like dictate your decisions off of is like real
Yeah,
life consistent facts. I don't know why people are so hesitant to like try something and just see if it works. Like I get it, like you don't want to make a mistake and you don't want to seem silly, but just try it. Like you said, like it takes a week to see if that's a right calorie goal for
yeah.
you.
I know. Like, what is a week to your lifetime?
Exactly, it's so small, and like even if you mess it up, like you know why, and then the next week you can either go up or go down. It's
Right.
really that simple.
Yeah.
Um, Same thing with like it's the same thing as like testing your maxes every 6 months or so to see if like the past 6 months of training have been working. Doesn't have to be that frequently, but like, geez, you want some like hard scientific results as to like what's going on.
Yeah. Definitely. I think if you are someone who wants to take care of their body a little better, it's definitely worth learning some basic biology. I know it's not everyone's strong suit, and a lot of people probably hated it in high school when they had to take it. But you owe it to yourself to take care of your own body. Like that's all you get. So just learning some basic biology, basic nutrition, and all that is it's going to do you great in the long run.
Absolutely. And I also just think like it just helps you understand like the world around you. I don't know. It's cool to
Yeah.
know why, and biology is like a peek into why, and just
Right.
understanding even just like the scientific method, like we were talking about, like testing and retesting. That'll translate into any aspect of life.
Yeah. Definitely. And then, all right, so we just have one more topic, and it's everyone's favorite, six pack.
Yeah.
Or I really want to. I did like 100 crunches yesterday. Where are my abs?
Right. Um, so that's a huge disconnect, and I really wish that would die. And it seems like it's making progress and it's coming along.
Yeah,
And for that reason, that makes me really happy. But I always tell people like your abs are just part of like your body, and train that for performance just like you would the rest of your body. And then the same thing, like diet will dictate how you look and your physique.
right.
Um, so like crunches, sit-ups, even if it's the best ab exercise in the world, it's not going to do anything for you if you're overweight. You
Yeah,
just have to, like we talked about before, like get that calorie deficit in, and kind of like reveal what's going on down there.
yeah. Your abs, like any other muscle, are covered by a layer of fat cells. So
Right.
regardless of how hard you work to train those muscles, if you still have a layer covering it, then it's not going to be visible.
Exactly.
Um, but regardless, what is that going to do for you?
Right. Right. I get it. Like the goal of having a six pack, like
Yeah,
it is. I mean, hey, I wish I had a six pack, but it like it does look good, and it does kind of prove to some point that like your body can function in a certain manner. But I just feel like that's kind of just been compounded in pop culture, and that's like the
yeah,
all be all. You can be strong and you can be healthy without a six pack, and you can look good without a six pack.
yeah, exactly.
And like for some
Uh,
people, they're just not in the cards, like to get to that low of a body fat percentage. I mean, for me to diet that down and get a six pack to show, God, my numbers would suffer. And it just wouldn't line up with my goals. So I mean, I'm
yeah,
happy getting after that. But I get it. A lot of people do want that as a major goal, and I
right.
respect that.
I think the positive thing you can take from having that as a goal is that it's going to take such a long time. It's such a process
Yeah.
that hopefully by the end of it, that you kind of just fall into that habit of doing whatever exercises plus eating, however works for you.
Right. Generally speaking, unless you're just kind of genetically gifted or starving yourself, if you do have like a visible six pack, you're probably
Yeah,
doing things right diet wise.
right.
I would venture to guess.
On live, one of my lifters, Spencer, he just commented that he felt like his abs grew more bracing for like squats, deadlifts, and bench. I definitely agree with that.
I would agree with it too. And also like just the abs, one growing, but two, like you can see like that power belly. Um, and that's a product of one, your abs like growing, but two, like learning how to brace,
Right.
and like obtain that position, which is so important.
Oh yeah,
That'll
definitely.
translate over to everything.
Yeah. And everyone's into functional fitness these days. In life, you're gonna get a lot further by learning how to brace
For
and
sure.
learn how to contract your upper body. Like really, the only thing that's good for is getting out of bed in the morning. Like
Right.
yeah,
Oh, absolutely. No, if you can brace and develop tension in your body, honestly, I think that's like one of the most fundamental aspects of training. Um,
yeah,
being able to develop tension when you need it and then be able to get rid of that tension when you don't. That's kind of what it all comes down to.
yeah, definitely. Saki just said I'm getting a power belly.
Nice. She's going up a weight class, right?
Yeah, she's going up to 50. She's doing pretty well. I think she's 51 something now. So
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
yeah, you actually did an amazing job with coaching her. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, the end goal was like we knew she was going back to powerlifting. So, I mean, having that in the back of my head the whole time hopefully sets her up to absolutely crush it.
yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all we have for this week, people. We hope you enjoyed it very much. Hope you learned something. If not, send us a comment on what you didn't or what you would like to learn instead. If you did learn something, please share it because hopefully someone else out there is going to learn something from it too.
Right. Even if it only helps one person, I mean, I feel like we've kind of done our job.
Yeah, so thanks for listening again. We'll see you guys next time, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to both of our Instagrams, Chasing Strength and Kilos and Closings, and our new YouTube channel, Chasing Kilos Lifts. and for more weekly podcasts.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.